Okay,
There we
perfect.
go.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for what they heard from the community engagement that they held in the last month, 2 months or so. So with that, we'll go straight into roll call minutes and roll call, right?
Damaris, John, Ariadna here, Alistair,
Yes.
Herman, Trevor,
Yes.
Michelle,
Present.
Molly, Campbell,
Here.
Jaylene, Sandra, Steve,
Here.
Megan, Anisha.
We're good? Okay, great. Thank you. And so, does anybody have any comments or objections or anything that they want to state regarding the minutes from last month's meeting? Nothing? All right. So if there aren't any material changes, then we can begin this meeting. And so who is here tonight to present?
Yeah, so thanks everyone
Please,
for welcoming us
introduce
to
yourself.
back again. My name is Amy Pivak. I'm with the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, and the four of us are here.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm the Director of Manhattan Planning at HPD.
My name is Ulysses. I'm a planner with Amy.
And I'm Francisca, Senior Borough Planner.
Okay, so will you be,
And so Ulysses and Akka will be presenting, and
Okay,
then we'll
yeah,
hear for
perfect.
Q&A.
so you can come up here. And Michelle is, you're controlling the slideshow?
I'm controlling it.
Oh, you're.
Oh, she
controlling it?
is.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
she's gonna
Well,
share
good.
screen.
Well, look at that.
If you want to take those two tall chairs behind you, they're available.
That's okay. But thank you. It's very official setup. Okay, so apologies
And folks,
for
we wanna move over or anything?
my back with all of you, but also thanking
No,
the
that's
Zoom.
fine. Thank you.
Okay, so, yeah, as Amy mentioned, in Damaris, we're here presenting the community engagement report back for the 324 East Fifth Street RFP, and we're really excited to be here again. We presented last fall, and so this is the culmination of our community engagement efforts. So our agenda for this evening will be as follows, and then Ulysses will be presenting. So
Is that
start.
mic on?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, maybe if you could speak more
Yeah,
into
of
it, 'cause
course.
I'm
Wanna
not
lower it
sure,
a little bit?
I'm not sure they can hear you back.
How about now?
Yes.
No,
that's
okay.
good.
Okay, great. So for some site context, the site is located at 324 East Fifth Street, Manhattan Block 446, Lot 20, within Community District 3 and Council District 2, so Councilmember Carlene Rivera's district. The site is approximately 11,540 square feet. It can be seen in orange over here in the graphic on the right, and it is zoned R8B. The site is owned by DOE, so under DOE jurisdiction, but currently used by NYPD for parking, accommodating approximately 50 parking spots. And for some context, this project originates from commitments from the Soho rezoning, and as part of the rezoning negotiations, the city entered into a points of agreement. And in that points of agreement, it stated to prioritize the development of city-owned land at 324 East Fifth Street for affordable housing. And it also stated the development would be subsequent to relocation of NYPD parking, in which agencies will evaluate potential relocation and incorporation of the parking into a new building. And so for this project, we conducted a variety of engagement strategies ranging from a project website, email blasts, social media posts. We also had an engagement toolkit. We tabled and flyered throughout the East Village. All our materials were available in English, Spanish, and Mandarin. We had a project-based questionnaire, which we're going to talk through the results of that shortly. And then our outreach efforts culminated in a public workshop. So during the workshop, we asked residents to participate in 3 activities, and around 34 people were able to join us. The first activity was designed to collect input on neighborhood needs and assets, and then ask community members to provide input on preferred ground floor community facility uses. The second activity was designed to collect input on affordability levels and types of affordable housing needed in the area. And the third activity asked community members to share their thoughts on a possible rezoning, particularly giving input on building height and form. And Ulysses will talk a little bit more in detail later on about what we heard at the community workshop. And so here we have our overall community engagement timeline, and it highlights some of the community engagement strategies that I just mentioned earlier. We began the engagement for this RFP in the fall of 2024 and then culminated in March 2025 when we closed the questionnaire shortly after the workshop. In total, we collected 380 questionnaires, of which 34 were filled out during the workshop, and we anticipate to release the RFP sometime late spring, early summer this year. And now I'll pass it on to Ulysses to talk a little bit more about what we heard.
Great, thank you, Agatha. Okay, so now let's talk about site relationship. So 50% of respondents who shared their zip code with us live on the same zip code as a site. 31% of respondents live in zip codes adjacent to the site. Here we see that the vast majority of respondents live near the site, and many others also said that they shop in businesses near the site or frequently pass by the site to visit family and friends. Less said that they work near the site. When asking community members on who faces the most housing barriers, community member respondents identified seniors as being a group that faces the most difficulties in finding and keeping housing. Other groups identified are households with children and homeless families and individuals. When asking respondents on preference for rental housing or homeownership, 84% of respondents selected rental housing. Here we see that their community members expressed that there is a great need for affordable housing to serve lower income households. We also see that there is interest for slightly higher income households, but not as many, and less preference for households with moderate to higher incomes. In addition to asking community members, excuse me, about their about housing issues, we also asked community members for their ground floor community facility preferences. Here, I also want to note that the site will include NYPD parking. So this means a small community facility. Community members identified a community center as their top preference. Some general feedback here regarding the community facility is that the community center should be a multi-purpose community facility that is open to all ages, something that brings the neighborhood together. At the workshop, we also showed a rezoning scenario. This is to better understand community members' preferences regarding a potentially taller and more dense building. And we also engaged community members on their preferences for building design and form. So what you see here is an envelope for a R7X zoning scenario. This would allow for the building to be up to 14 stories with a setback at 9 stories. So the general attitude we received was positive. There was great support to build more density on the site, but it was also noted that careful thoughtfulness should be placed on the site so that the setback is considerate given the narrow street. Also, special attention should be given to the facade of the building so it fits well within the neighborhood context and fits with the older surrounding buildings. These are some of the comments we received in our open-ended question in our questionnaire. To summarize here, we received a lot of comments asking for affordable housing for seniors. There was also some comments left asking for some sort of green space, open space. And in addition to building greater density on the site, again, there should be thoughtfulness placed on the building, given the narrow street. Okay, so now let's zoom out a bit and let's take a look at the overall development process here. So we are at the end of the community visioning phase. We will be releasing the RFP and CBR sometime in late spring, early summer. Then we will release the RFP. Developer teams will submit their proposal. Afterwards, we will enter the review process where we evaluate proposals and designated developer team. We will then work with that developer team through the public approvals process, prepare the project for financial closing, and place the site on Housing Connect for all New Yorkers to apply. So here, taking a closer look at the RFP itself, this is what we look for when evaluating proposals. We look at programming, so that's looking at residential and non-residential uses. We also pay great attention to how well a proposal responds to the priorities outlined in the CBR. We also look at financial feasibility of the project, the quality and building design, and last but not least, developer experience and capacity.
Could you tell us what a CBR is?
Yes, so the CBR is the Community Visioning Report, and that is something that will be released alongside the RFP in the form of an appendix. And what that is, it is a summary of all of our findings that we collected throughout the community engagement phase. Yes, so that concludes our presentation. So we are open for questions now.
Thank you. All right. So, looks like you all did a lot of work. And so we're gonna open it up to committee members that may have questions. Any committee members have questions? Yes.
You showed the timeline. I'm curious how the potential rezoning plays into that timeline and whether or not that would come like while you're negotiating with your chosen or preferred developer, or if those two pieces of the process would be like segmented.
So based on the feedback that we got, we are proposing an R7X rezoning scenario, but the rezoning itself would not take place until the public approvals process.
So we would be going into the ULURP with a developer selected.
Right.
To follow up on that question, I
Wait,
mean,
Alistair was next, I'm sorry.
So you want to follow up? If you have
Another-
a similar question, and I'll go after you.
well, it has to do with the rezoning, like if someone is selected and they've got architectural plans that assume rezoning, but the rezoning doesn't happen, then they kind of have to redo their design, I suppose, for the building. Eventually.
Yeah, how do
I
you?
can
I
try
mean,
to
there's
take a
costs
crack.
involved in
I don't know what the
that.
zoning is.
Yeah, usually, if a developer's coming with a proposal, we work with, usually if a developer is coming with a proposal, before we take it through the public approvals process, we work internally and with other agencies to make sure that it is feasible and most likely will be able to pass through ULURP.
Can I also
I'm
just add to
That's
that a
kind of
little
question.
bit?
It's kind of insulting.
Hi, a couple other notes on, like how the rezoning process plays out. So if we designate a developer who's proposing a rezoning, which, we have given you the scenario we think might happen. First of all, we're gonna come back to you and we're going to present what the proposal that is designated is. So there's gonna be some
I
steps to
just-
process, So we're gonna come back to the community board. We're gonna show you the project that was designated. And then there's going to be a pre-ULURP process, and part of that pre-ULURP process is we're gonna be working with the developer to come up, to make sure that the project is ready for ULURP. So any feedback that we might receive after we come back to you guys, we'll be thinking about seeing if we can incorporate any, small improvements. And then we'll come back to you before we certify into ULURP to do a pre-ULURP presentation to gather your final feedback. So there's going to be a couple touch points with the community who obviously is the first phase in the ULURP process, which is how we would get the approvals for the rezoning. We're also going to be working with the council member, getting feedback from them early on in the pre-ULURP process. So hopefully, if we're going into ULURP with a rezoning proposal, we're hoping to get it approved because we would have had touch points with the community, the council member, all the officials that would be, giving feedback and approving the rezoning.
Yeah, sorry, it's meant to be a collaborative process.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't mean it just,
Yeah.
like, we're streamlining.
That's the advantage of having an RFP and a publicly owned site is that we do go through this extensive process. Rezonings can extend that pre-ULURP timeline a little bit because obviously we're asking folks to let us build taller and build more.
I mean, that would be the time, it's through the ULURP that you would ask for, right? But
Well,
I,
even in the pre-ULURP, we would want to, we're gonna be considering a rezoning. It's what the plans are gonna be planned to is to the height and FAR of that rezoning.
Can you, just following up again, with an R7X, what is the floor area ratio for that zoning designation, do you know? I know the R8, the R8B, I think that we have now is 4.8.
Yeah, the FAR for that one is a 6.
What is
Six.
it again?
that's six.
Okay, it's not huge.
Alistair?
Sure, thanks. Just going back to some of your data, I think you said there was only 308 responses you got in our entire district on this project, and that's what you're gonna be relying on as the community input?
380.
Do you weigh at all how many people are responding to this and how much you weigh the community input? It just seems like a very small number of people that are.
And to add to that before you answer, we physically live on the block where this project would, and we only saw one poster up the
We're
entire time.
adjacent to this. Okay, so what we're gonna do is that we're gonna hold comments and questions to the public portion, okay? So if you wanna speak, there is a form on the table in the back. You should feel free to fill one out. We really do wanna hear from you.
Okay.
If you have any remarks, we really do, but we have to, because we're a community board, we have to have it on record, okay? And so just so that people know procedurally, the committee speaks first and asks questions. And then after that, we turn it over to the public and we take comments and questions from the public. Okay? And we'll try to be brief because we know people have burning questions they want to ask. So,
That's 0.2% of the district population that has an interest in this, based on this, so.
Yeah, thank you for your question and, gathering community input is always a challenge, but we always do our best to collect as much input as possible. As mentioned in today's presentation, in addition to some of the public tabling, flyering, and the workshop that we did, we also held a large online presence. We distributed an online engagement toolkit with a lot of community-based organizations to help spread the word. So anyone who received those emails would be able to print our flyers that held QR codes to our questionnaire, the workshop event coming up. We also had social media posts, and we also posted a lot of these flyers in both, and not,
No,
sorry,
that-
English, Spanish, and Mandarin.
I'm not saying you didn't go out and do your best. I'm just trying to make the point that there was a very small percentage of the community that seemed to have an interest or an opinion on this
It's like very
project.
few people vote.
Do you-
All right.
Do you weigh that in how you will adjust your proposals and things like that or it doesn't matter whether 5 people showed up or 5,000 or 500,000. It's just, you just look at the data, that's it.
Yeah, so we just consider that responses that are given to us, and those are the ones that are incorporated into the CBR and then published as part of the appendix. So we wish more people would participate, and participation is always encouraged, but this is
Michelle
the
and then
amount that we
Steve.
got.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Alistair's question, because there's never gonna be like, barring like an actual like real survey like that some data scientists do, you're never gonna get like, I would say evidence-based responses here, but like CB3 does have district needs that we publish every single year that has evidence-based stuff that the office spends a lot of time working on with like real data behind it. And so I just, is this a required, I'm newer to this committee, is the CBR a required part of the RFP in the city? And are there,
No. So can I
It's not
stop
part of
us
the
for a
overall
minute?
process.
No.
This is not a process that is typically one that happens. Like in this way, right? Like, there's not always a lot of community engagement. And so 380 surveys may seem like a small amount, but as a practitioner who has published about 10 reports and has done extensive surveying, there's all kinds of surveying, and a sample of 380 for one building and the surrounding area is significantly, really good, actually. It's pretty good. And I can tell you that because we just did an extensive survey where we surveyed the entire neighborhood and we got 900 for massive issue. This is not so bad. So I get it, and I want to hear, you know, I'm not trying to shut you guys' responses down, but I do feel like I did want to say that because I want to temper our expectations because this is not a typical thing. I mean, I have not participated with HPD in the past in this way and had this kind of a process and even had a questionnaire distributed like this. So, you know, we should look at it and give our feedback on how to improve it, but I do want to at least, you know, give a little bit of credit that this is not a typical process.
oh, and I wasn't trying to say that.
No, it's
HPD
okay.
didn't
I
do a
don't
good
want to
job
shut
or
you down,
anything.
Michelle.
Yeah, I'm just saying that like when we do things like this, you get a certain segment of the population, the people who care the most, and they might care the most for different reasons. And that worries me from a, you know, a neutrality standpoint when you're making really big decisions, like adding a lot of really needed units to a neighborhood, like a community room, I'm sure would be great, but how do you fund that? You know, does that detract from the number of units that you end up with? That's my worry when you get like people who maybe actually will never live in this building, giving input on things that might negatively impact the outcome for the people that really need homes. That's my point about that. So thanks.
Any other questions? Steve, please.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, I mean, I think 380 responses seems pretty impressive to me, given that most people, you're asking them about it's very site-specific questionnaire. So if you live below Houston Street, odds are you don't particularly care that much what happens on Fifth Street. Or if you live up, you know, above 10th Street. So if you look at people living within a certain radius, and most half the responses were within the zip code, I think that's significant response. Also, if you're looking at other evidence, you know, based on like our community district, our community needs statement. I know that there's like thousands of seniors, for example, who are on waiting lists for affordable housing. So we know there's a lot of data out there about what the needs are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just comment. I appreciate that HPD is like taking both the community engagement piece and the proposal here very seriously. I think that when we come up with our district needs every year, that often feels like an exercise in futility. And this feels very, you know, it's cool to see like, you know, a one-to-one relationship between what the community has been consistently saying that we need and seeing proposals that would respond to that. So, cool, thank you.
Any other comments from the committee members? Yes, Susan would like to speak.
So I just want to, as an overall comment about about the ULURP and our district needs. This building that we're in right now came out of our district needs, so, so I feel like it is very important and, you know, the process is very important.
Yeah, and as Melissa mentioned earlier, the ULURP is an opportunity to ask for things.
Yeah.
And for the community board to re-engage again.
Any other committee members have questions? No? All right, so then I have one person signed up to speak.
I think there's more back
Oh, there's
there.
a bunch
There's
going on.
there's speaker forms on the back table if you'd like to
You didn't
speak.
bring them tonight.
Sorry. Oh, I didn't know people left them back there. Michelle or any of you.
Well,
can
we
you
don't
like
know
to-
the order in which they came in, so. okay?
That's okay.
So I'll just have to call you randomly, but I'm gonna call the person whose speakerphone I had from the beginning, because. And that is Karen.
Right, okay. Should I get up there or?
You
Yeah,
can if you want. to,
yeah,
sure.
that way you'll.
I want to also be clear with everyone, our time is limited, so we give our speakers about 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, hi, hello. I'm, Karen Jorgensen. I'm a member of the board of This Land Is Ours Community Land Trust. And I'm also the director of a shelter for homeless people on the Upper West Side. So I'm very well aware of the problems and the needs of seniors and the drastic lack of affordable senior housing. And especially I'm aware of the problem of seniors occupying the 5th floor of walk-up buildings and gradually being condemned to be isolated in those apartments because they can't really get down and back up easily. So I'm hoping that HPD takes seriously the recommendation for senior housing. And I hope that you make it 100% affordable. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Valerio Orselli. He's speaking in
I don't
support.
really have a speech. I just wish to make a few comments. First of all, regarding the number of respondents at 380, which is, I think, remarkable that people took the time to fill out the survey. But also want to remind this board and HPD that long before this process started, we had collected over 600 signatories of petition from the community saying that they want to see housing built at this site, specifically housing for seniors. So it's more than just the 380. There's been more widespread support for this project. Second of all, I also hope that one of the requirements of the RFP is that whatever gets developed, that it be permanently affordable, not affordable for 20 or 30 or even 40 years, but in perpetuity. Now, that may seem to be hard, but we have accomplished that with Stewart Park. I'm sure we can do it here, okay? And that's pretty much it. We support the project. I think you can tell how the community sentiment is, and the faster we can move forward, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alexandra Milifana. You want to speak from there?
Yeah, I can speak from here. I have a caring voice. I have a question first and then a comment. I think my question is, with respect to your 380 signatures, how many of them actually came from the block?
I don't.
All of them.
No, nothing.
No, there aren't 380 people living there.
So as previously shown in the presentation, pull that up.
80% came from the zip code
81% was
which is more than a square mile.
Okay, yeah. So 50% of respondents live on the same zip code as the site, so that's 103. And then 31% of all respondents live in zip codes adjacent to that zip code.
But did you actually isolate how many people
You can.
actually live on the block of your 380 number?
On the block itself, no, because we don't ask for addresses, we just have zip codes.
And of the 600 that the gentleman spoke about just a moment ago, how many of them actually came from the block?
We haven't analyzed that, but this project is to benefit not just the block, but the entire Lower East Side.
I'm not
So it's-
opposed to the project, sir. I'm just asking you,
we
did you
didn't-
directly petition the people on the street?
When
Yes.
we collected the petition, we actually went in front of the site and collected many signatures in front of the park, of the site.
Yeah.
But we didn't break them down later on by specific streets, no.
Right, so we're adjacent to the block, and probably one of your forms was the form I filled out that expressed my concerns about how you didn't do any outreach to us, and from a fundamental level, didn't seem to even understand what the building might require. For example, their mock-up of a building is against our building, and they can't legally build against our building. So there are multiple things that were wrong with the design, and I thought that outreach to us could have maybe addressed some of the concerns that we had as adjacent residents, and there hasn't been any outreach to us specifically. And my concern about the other residents of the street is I did go to a public hearing, and the people who actually came from our block were very concerned, not about the use of this project, but about the proposed size and scale of which there were sort of two altering proposals in terms of height, and what the community use might be, although, you know, it's kind of shallow, so there's not very many things that could go into the community use that's being proposed. Because the building itself is shallow in order to accommodate an area in the back for parking for the police. So there were a number of things that I thought would be addressed, at least with us, given that we're adjacent to it and are going to bear the brunt of a construction at some point. But nobody has outreach to us. One of our residents has actually outreached to HPD to try to gather more information. And HPD was very kind enough to have met with him, but that's the only communication I think that anybody has had with HPD other than going to public hearings and expressing our concern about the components of this project and the fact that it really didn't involve the people on the street
us.
who are gonna be markedly
We're gonna respond,
affected
yeah.
by the construction and the building. And maybe at the end for a good use, but we still believe that we should be participants in this process.
Yeah, so thank you for your comment. I'm gonna take the first stab and maybe I'll pass to Amy. This is a very preliminary process. So what you see right here on the screen is not a building design. It's a massing, and the purpose of this was just to show the differences in height. But it's up to development teams to propose specific building designs, and that will be in accordance with DOB and all necessary regulations that any building in New York City has to go through. So we'll be mindful of your building and the considerations of the block to not disturb or affect anyone.
Can I just ask a question in response? I mean, why do you say you cannot build next to your building or right up
Because
against?
there's a foot of space that belongs to us. So without permission from us, you can't usurp that space. There's not a building to building
Okay.
right of way.
Sure.
And we
Okay.
also have,
That's
we also
something-
have an access to
Illustrative
the
mapping.
backyard that needs
Yeah.
to be maintained.
Yeah, we
Nice
currently
fish.
access
Maybe
it.
we should-
Can we?
Okay,
Yeah,
that's-
so this
Okay.
is just to clarify, this is an illustrative massing, so we're sorry we didn't know about the 1 foot of space, but any development will be mindful of that. It's just a mapping. So it's not the actual building design, the building won't look like this. This is all very preliminary. It's just to gather feedback.
Okay, thank you. Antonia Militano? Oh,
No, that was Alex.
yes.
You're the same person?
So this is one thing too I want to ask. I
Okay.
feel like our building, since we're the only private property that is adjacent to this project, that we should be engaged at least at some point with the developers, just to make sure there's a legal understanding of where the project's gonna stop and start. And we haven't
Never, ever
been
done that.
engaged at all.
Well, just reiterating, this is preliminary, so there's no developer yet. This is just, we were gathering the engagement and feedback from the community. So there is no project. Once there's a developer and once they have to go through actual DOB processes, they'll be mindful of everything.
But for the developer's proposal, doesn't the area have to be spec'd out on which their project is going to exist, which would include respect to our property?
Of course.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes,
That's part of. So we technically should be engaged before the RFP.
No,
Um,
no.
no.
If you're specifying, again, you just shook your head, yes, that the area that the goes out, the area that's specified for the developers to build on, that goes out for the RFP, that the developers are doing their proposal based on, is decided before they give their proposals. Because they're knowing what area they have to work
We
with.
have the lot dimensions and that will be provided in the RFP, but this is not this is just an illustrative
Yeah.
massing for the height.
I understand.
But this is not the lot line.
I understand, but I'm just saying, as a private building owner that's adjacent to the project, I would like to make sure that, yes, you know the lot that you can build on, but also, like was mentioned before, we have back access to it.
So can I just stop us real quick?
Yeah.
I do want to state that the community board is a forum where you can come to express those views. And I was informed that at the last meeting, your building was invited.
It was a block
The Block
association group.
Association.
Yeah.
Was invited, I guess, to come and do some outreach. That doesn't excuse that you may not have been reached out to, but I mean, we're all in that same boat most of the time anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Can I just say, we are really early in the process. The process does not end upon designation. There is the pre-development process. And the developer that is designated will get on site to spec out the site. And anything that they may find that would impact the building design slightly, they'll make those updates in pre-development before we go into ULURP. And there will also be, an outreach process before we get into ULURP where the developer will likely, hopefully we're designating a great developer who understands community engagement. That's why we have a competitive process to get to the people that can work in the community, building these buildings. That hopefully they will be reaching out to you. And then in terms of construction staging, this is a sensitive area. The buildings are very close. We understand that. And also we're near a school. So we do have to be really sensitive there. We have experience on my team with, building these sensitive or working with developers to build these sensitive sites. So we completely understand and hear you, and we will make sure that, they're working with the community to be very sensitive about the construction staging and also to be transparent.
Can you speak a little bit to what that process looks like when you are going to build on a site and you have adjacent properties to consider? Is there outreach that is done typically to the building owners? Are there meetings or how does that generally work?
It depends on the site itself. So it depends on the sensitivities around the site. Definitely, there has to be outreach to the neighboring building owners, especially as they're about to do their DOB submissions. So their DOB submissions are gonna come after your approvals. Is kind of funky, but they will be reaching out because they're gonna have to come and check out the neighboring sites to make sure that their construction and anything they do is not going to impact the building. And then they're gonna have to work with you to make sure that that everything is in place to keep everything stable, to not impact the building during construction.
So they take their needs into consideration
They
and-
take their needs into consideration. Again, we're gonna have to work really closely
Right.
with DOE.
Uh-huh.
I imagine most community boards, when we come to y'all during the pre-ULURP and ULURP process, I imagine there's probably gonna be some asks for the developer to work with the community board around construction staging. We get that quite often. And, again, HPD is used to working with developers on these sensitive sites. So we will be pushing them, making sure that they're, coming to y'all. But
Can you just put the the timeline up again and with some perspective in terms of timing, because we're very early in this process.
Right,
We're
we are
talking
early.
about things that happen at 7 or 6, it's 6. So if you can, when we talk about 1,
Right.
2, the late spring, early summer 2025, we're at what point right now?
That's where we are. So we're just right now presenting the community engagement feedback, and then we'll be publishing the RFP along with the community visioning report. And that will basically open up the process for developers to submit proposals.
And the one thing you have up there is issue RFP, CVR, late spring, early summer 2025. Can you expand just quickly on the dates after that?
Just a little difficult to say,
Just
but,
draft.
but basically, after we release the, yeah. After we release the RFP, we enter the next stage, so that's where developers will submit proposals to us. And then from there, it will be a couple of months for us to review. So it's an extensive review process.
Do you have a sense of how much time? they
Can we
have
not
to
do that? Like,
All right. I just wanted to know, do you give them 60 days, 90 days?
I
Yeah.
want to keep some order in this meeting, so I really make the
I'll
folks
just
not to
pop
jump
up.
out.
So for the process, after we release the RFP, developers will have about 3 months to respond. After that, we usually take about 7 to 8 to 9 months to finalize designation. So we're thinking probably around like in the fall, by the end of the year, we'll have a team on board. At that point, they'll start the pre-ULURP and the ULURP process. So the pre-ULURP can be, a year to 2 years to do environmental review, all of the work they have to do on their land use application, and then ULURP itself 7 months. So that's our general timeline.
So for number 6 is what date? Just all those dates you just added up.
We usually say this whole process about 5 to 8 years. So
It's too long.
it's too long. I agree it's
Well,
long,
just trying to
but
put in perspective.
it's gonna be a few years before we're in construction.
So I have a question, we have some people and I want to get to them. But once you receive the submissions and you're reviewing them and you make, your decisions, do we wait for the pre-ULURP process when we get to see it again as a community?
So shortly after we designate, we'll let you know when it's coming. We'll make an announcement, and then the team, Melissa's team, they'll meet and they'll come out to you very early, within a month or two, to let
So
you know the
our-
proposal and start early conversations.
So our role is in the visioning, you guys will select, and then we won't have any other input in the selection process.
That's right. We'll come back
Okay.
with the team. Yeah.
All right.
And then there's room after that to discuss with that.
But there'll still be room to talk about complications and other issues because they have
Absolutely.
real
Yeah.
concerns. They have
Yes,
property and they
absolutely.
wanna be, they're not like, rich building owners,
And we'll have an actual team on board who can actually respond, who'll be doing the work, so they can respond to you for sure.
Okay, great. All right, so we're gonna move on to the next person, and it's Lynn Barton.
I mean, honestly, I was talking before and then everybody.
I know,
else
but you
talked,
didn't have-
and
you didn't-
I
oh,
didn't
you
really
didn't
get an
finish?
answer
You
to
didn't
finish.
finish?
No, it's two, no,
I
no,
just-
it was a 2-minute limit.
But
and
you
you were
have
way
2
over that.
minutes.
I didn't speak for 2 minutes.
Yes, you do.
The other question.
I'm gonna give you another minute, but you did.
I
I-
just
go
wanna
ahead.
make sure that I know you have a point person working with the school, that we're acknowledged, because we're a corporation, and we're also engaged at the different points of the project by the appropriate party of what the next steps are, because we are right there. So I just want to see an effort for our information to be taken
Okay.
and to identify who that person will be.
Okay. And I
It'll be the
believe
same person.
Ahmed took your,
Right?
took
We
your
have the-
information at the
we have all the
workshop.
And he never called me.
Okay, so
Or emailed
I'll give
me.
you mine as well. He's
Thank you.
our acting commissioner now, commissioner now. It is very busy, but like, I'll definitely give, I have my parts as well, so we can be.
Okay, so now we're gonna move on to Lynn Barton. Thank you.
Thanks, I filled out a form, I think with you, at Astor Place, I remember you. Yeah. And I was really excited to see that and pleased that there was some consideration, I'm pleased now to see that there's consideration for senior housing, which is just, I moved to the East Village when you could get a 1-bedroom apartment for $150. I'm now stuck in a 6th-floor walk-up that I can just manage. I was injured in an assault years ago, told that I could re-injure myself and having to do this. Been on a NYCHA waiting list for 12 years. I've been applying to every housing connect thing that I qualify for, which is not much, with a very low income. And I probably won't. Hopefully I'll get something before this is finished at some kind, but I'm glad it's finally being because it's outrageous, it's disrespectful that I have to wait till I'm actually incapacitated or offered just, apartment sharing with strangers. It is disrespectful for the people that really built, a renaissance of that neighborhood. And I'm in the next, I'm in 1003 on 12th Street. Anyway, thanks.
All right, thank you. So we have two more speakers and we're almost done. Jean Stone.
Hi, I live two questions. One is, what I'm hearing now is that it's sort of a 5 to 8 year timeline to get to that point of the item 6, construction, and 7, lottery. Is that?
A building open, building
Building
done,
open,
so at
okay.
the end, yeah.
And then the sketch that showed the yellow building, it was 14 floors was the option that you said we're going for. And how many units in those 14 floors? Approximately.
Approximately 80 to 100 units.
80 to 100.
80 to 100 units.
Thank you. We are from 99 East 4th, so the New York NYPD parking, we're the building on 4th Street that's, you know, the 3-section building. So we're just very interested to know timelines, noise, et cetera. Obviously, a lot of this is inevitable, but we're just trying to size it and space it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, unless anybody else has signed up, our last speaker is Ashwin Rastagi.
Yeah, I just want to speak very briefly. I helped out with a lot of the petitioning, as part of the community center on behalf of this Land of Us Community Land Trust. We encountered many, elders, when we were petitioning who had either been displaced from the neighborhood or were trapped in unsuitable units, like Lynn was saying. And so this feels very, naturally needed in the neighborhood, which is often referred to as a naturally occurring senior residence neighborhood. So, it's very exciting to see this opportunity to take back land that has been unnecessarily usurped by the NYPD and is very underutilized in our neighborhood, and make sure that it is being used public land for public good. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Trevor, and then I'm gonna go to folks that are online
Oh,
waiting.
mine will be quick. You have to build a parking garage.
Ground level
Ground level.
parking.
It's going to be a ground level NYPD parking.
Typically, how much does that add to the cost?
Unfortunately, we're the wrong folks to
Okay.
answer cost questions.
Maybe who's
But-
paying for it?
It's ground level outdoor parking, isn't it?
No, inside.
So, yeah, in the rear and maybe part like within, underneath the building.
I know it's a bit difficult to see, but if you look at
Kinda
the
like back
massing, behind the bluish color, there, it's transparent, that's supposed to represent NYPD parking.
Is that an NYPD capital project?
They'll probably,
should be.
it'll probably come through our budget, but that's to be figured out way down the line.
That color represents sub-level, or you said ground level?
Ground level.
But at the last meeting, you said it was
Okay.
outdoor. Just need to know.
All right,
I'm done.
all right, so we're done with this portion, Michelle. Can you ask people, I'm gonna ask folks, if you can hear me, to please raise your hand if you have a question and you're on the Zoom and you want us to call on you. So please raise your hand. Let's give Michelle a moment and give folks a moment to raise their hand. And when I say raise your hand, I don't physically mean raise your hand. I mean, raise the option on your Zoom that allows you to raise your hand.
And also, Damaris, I think that Molly might have sent you some questions.
She did, but
She was on.
yeah, she can ask them if she
No,
wants to.
she dropped off because she was on the subway, I think. or
Okay.
She's traveling. No one is ready in there. No one? Yeah.
Nobody? Okay. All right, did anybody here, before we move on, have any last minute questions?
Yes, I'm Jean's neighbor on 4th Street. I just wanted to ask about the schoolyard. This plan is going to affect the schoolyard for the vocational high school on 4th Street. Is there still going to be a designated space for them to play basketball, and
You're not touching it.
they're not touching it? Okay, just wanted to know that. Thank you very much.
Can I ask you to just fill out a form, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
And just a quick question, since you said, you conduct construction sensitive to the areas and it's a school area, does that mean work would be from like 8 AM to 11 AM? Or are you not the right people to ask for that? 8 PM, excuse me, to 11 PM at night?
Seven starting area time.
Yeah, unfortunately, not the right people to
Okay.
ask, but, certainly if there is feedback about that within the process, for which we will be making you aware of the steps along the way, then, you know.
Legal starting time is 7 AM.
Yeah, and I know there's different rules when it comes to schools and stuff,
Schools.
but I don't know what they are.
Well, that's during the school day though.
Yeah.
So just, so what she said is our experience has been that construction in and around the school has been between 3 and 11
By the cities, yeah.
without any like cessation of the appropriate alarm.
All right, I have a couple questions from a committee member that's not here. I was trying to go through them real quick to see which ones I can. So I have a question here about local developers and how HPD treats or prioritizes local developers. Can you give us a little, a brief response to that?
Sure. So in the RFP document, we lay out a bunch of different criteria that teams are scored on. We do give preference points for history of local investment. So groups that have done something demonstrable in the neighborhood to help the neighborhood, if they can say they've done that, they'll get bonus points for that. So I'd say, yeah, that's probably the main way we do that.
Another follow-up question is, how does HPD, what is your role afterwards? And how do you ensure that developers engage the community and manage their buildings effectively?
It's funny because Agatha has to do this a lot. So first of all, there'll be you know, when we close, and I'm assuming this is post-closing, post-construction, that's the question, just to clarify how we hold them to their promises.
Like to their promises.
Yes, so, when we close, they will be signing a regulatory agreement with us that has stipulations about affordability and things like that, so they're gonna be locked into those requirements through the reg agreement. There's also going to be, you know, inclusion of what the project is in our closing documents, and if they run afoul of that, say there's supposed to be a certain use and they don't do that anymore, then we have our, property management that goes out and look at buildings that have been built, and, they tell us if something is up, and then we hold them to it. And then finally, if there are lots of violations or something like that, certainly you know, we will be keeping an eye out for that. So 311 reports, sometimes the community boards reach out to us and we respond to that. We'll make sure that our property management folks are getting out there, are issuing violations. We're making sure violations get cleared. So yeah, we're keeping track, and if you have any concerns, please reach out to us.
I have one more quick question, about, well, first, I might have missed it, where you might have mentioned whether any of the community space will be used for commercial and enterprises, or if it's all gonna be designated for community facility use in terms of, you know, like a community center, et cetera. If you could just answer that really quickly. Or we don't know, that's fine too, but.
So the zoning would not allow for commercial use, so that's why, we asked the questionnaire for ground floor community facility preferences.
Okay, that was it. Thank you. All right, so unless we have any other questions, I think that this concludes this meeting, right?
No.
Right? And so then Susan is going to say a few words in closing, and then we will do a roll call and we will be out of Civic Hall.
So I just wanted to thank Civic Hall for supplying this community use for the community. As I mentioned earlier, this exact building came out of a ULURP that came from our district needs statement for incubators for first time or new entrepreneurs, which is the food hall downstairs. And it is actually, I think our stipulations allow something like up to 30 times a year for community use. So it's something community groups can apply for also. You can go online to the website and apply for that. We're trying to encourage people to use it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Thank you, HPD.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. All right, wait, we gotta
Roll
roll
call.
call
Damaris,
here.
John, Ariadna here, Alistair,
Yeah.
Herman, Trevor,
Yeah.
Michelle, Molly, Campbell,
Here.
Jaylene, Sandra, Steve,
Here.
Megan, and Nisha.
Nice.
Night.